my gosh.
That
Heather
sweet
is
button
first.
press.
Look at that. It's like 2008.
Oh man, they're already rolling in.
They
First
are.
and Friends.
Did we start recording?
No, we haven't started
No.
recording yet.
Nope.
We're just you
Never.
know.
This is all gone.
Okay.
This is lost to the wind. What's up, Cheryl? This is
Oh, I'm still.
Oh, it's locked on my screen. Look at that. I'm pinned. Look at that.
Camilla. No.
Now we can see your ugly
Oh,
mug.
thank God. My ugly mug that is wearing my handmaiden Utini shirt in honor of the day.
That's right. That's right. The ones that we apparently do not own, which doesn't make any sense at all.
It's
You slackers.
I know. I don't buy
it's
a lot of
almost
my own
like
products.
we also have to buy our own shirts.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. That's right. Although, fun fact, here's some behind the scenes knowledge. We've been working with Joxy a good deal to work on sort of our merch, like all in all, just together. And like we're talking about maybe moving to Teespring. You guys ever bought anything from Teespring before?
Oh.
Nope.
I've never even heard of it.
TeePublic has got some issues that I'm not super satisfied with, of course, you know.
You?
I know, so, you know, we're considering looking at some other options and stuff. And Teespring has got a really cool, like, what would you call it? Like a storefront kind of page, right? So you can, like, brand it, and it looks all cool and Utini official. So when we send them there, it's not just, like, a bunch of squares that have got our patterns on. It's, like, this beautiful, like, nice bannered page with, like pictures of the actual clothing like laid out and stuff. It looks really cool. So, you know.
But does it have the original Lost Stars tee?
The original Lost Star? No. Nobody has that.
And I do.
Oh, that's not true.
We already got multiple copyright violations. Because, like they're way more strict than TeePublic is. Like you can't have we got busted on a bunch of them for having the word Star Wars in the title, which is
If you don't have a copyright notification as a Star Wars company, you're a nerd.
That's right.
You're a nerd,
That's right.
man.
That's right.
All right, do I start recording in Zoom when I start this day? We got some awesome folks already chatting.
Everybody's
First was
on
a thing.
Everybody's on Twitch too. Nice. Did you only share the Twitch link this time, Wes?
No, I did. I actually shared the YouTube one as well. I'm about to
Nice.
share the Facebook, but Twitch was first. So
Nice.
maybe they click on the first link.
Yeah, that might make sense.
That's
Welcome.
fair.
Twitch is
Whatever
superior,
works.
so you know we're talking about moving there permanently. So we'll see what happens.
And YouTube's gone. I mean,
Yeah.
Is it actually?
no, it's not.
Okay.
Actually.
What to say? Would not surprise me, quite frankly. Would not surprise me. All right, I already hit record in Zoom. You guys ready to hit record in
Audacity?
in podcast world? You know?
Yeah, baby.
All right. We've shared in all the necessary places, correct, Wes?
Correct.
All right. Let's see. Here.
Alrighty then.
Let me do another test really fast. This is about how loud I talk. I'm a loud talker in general. Let me bring that down just a hair.
You're a loud talker, except for when like there's a topic that you don't really care that much about, and you're like, yeah, that'd be cool. That's cool.
Sorry, what's that question again?
Then I just play with like the with like settings and like live stream stuff. That's one of the reasons that I'm like talking about maybe just handing it off to Wes, because then it doesn't let me like I can actually be a podcast host and not like this freaking DJ with all my buttons I'm mashing and shit. Now I have
It's an impressive setup.
He's actually just building a terrarium slightly off screen.
all the time, every episode. All right,
That's right.
Everything is ready. Are
All
you guys
right.
ready?
Ready.
All right, going live. Not live. We're already live. Hitting record in 3, 2, 1, and go.
Excellent.
Doing it.
Actually, when we hit record, that's like the opposite of going live. We're going like permanent. Like
I know. Yeah, it's
saved.
Like
Ooh,
anti.
no pressure. No pressure. Going
Secret.
permanent.
Permanent.
This is forever. Yeah. When all the bombs have launched and all the cockroaches are alive, it'll be just them in podcasts
That's
that will be
right.
left on the earth,
I'm not sure what to make of that.
just littered with USB drives all over the world of podcasts.
Oh my gosh.
Can you imagine that if you're like in an apocalyptic scenario and you're like you've had no entertainment for 7 years and you just find the last like little piece of media and you plug it into a computer, oh, it is just enough juice, and it's like episode 41 of our podcast, and you're like,
We are
no!
the last setup.
Yes.
I thought it was an album. Oh my god. Okay, before I get us a really cool transition, I want to just call out Timothy's comment in the chat right now, because he says, I see that Astro's Empire poster behind you. Did Palpatine cheat at the end of Return of the Jedi? I bet Yup Tashu banged on a trash can to prompt Palpatine to transfer his essence.
Oh my god.
Hot
And
damn,
hot.
throwing some shade. Jeez.
Oh God! For those of us that are the Venn diagram of baseball and Star Wars fans, that's a fantastic joke.
Yeah, and y'all can all kiss my Houston Astros loving ass too.
Oh man, you can. And no, you can also do. You can listen to episode 57 of the Living Force podcast. Welcome everyone to the Padmé Amidala spectacular episode of our show. Oh my gosh, we are here on a Saturday afternoon?
Whatever
Evening?
day. I don't
Whatever
keep
it is.
track of days when I'm on night shift. I have no
It's
idea
night
what
shift.
day it is.
Day 472.
It's quarantine mixed with night shift, and we are here talking about Star Wars books and Padmé Amidala. I am one of your hosts, Eric Eilerson, and joining me, as always, are the doctors. We have Dr. Corey Helton. Hello.
What's crack-a-lackin'?
Hey, I love those terrariums in your shop,
Yes,
man.
I
They're
got
pretty cool looking.
terrariums. We got a terrarium right there. Where my finger, there. Terrarium. Yes, there's a terrarium. It's a small one. I literally rushed to carry it in here because I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna show a terrarium in my shot now." Because I got.
And
this...
is that a plant outside of a jar?
Yes,
next to it?
yes, that is a
What is
plant.
going
That is
on there?
that is a parlor palm. I want to say.
Wow, and you
Thanks
guys
for
may
that.
you may recognize that accusatory voice is Dr. Charles Henkel. What's up, sir?
How's it going? Just channeling my inner Tarkin.
Oh, perfect. We love that. And lover of the cheating ass Houston Astros himself, with Wes Jenkins. Hey, buddy.
What's up?
Oh, we are all here because we love Star Wars books. We love Padmé Amidala, and we love doing a show. So we are going to talk later on in this show about how the expanded universe has expanded the legacy of one of the great senators in the history of Naboo. But before that, a couple things. First of all, guys, we have a birthday to celebrate. Today is the 18th birthday of Attack of the Clones.
Yay.
Episode 2 is 18 years old.
It's finally
Holy
old enough
shit.
to be less statutory rapey, so that's good.
Less creepy. Attack of the Clones, I guess, is good.
Yeah, that's what I said. Totally. Let's go with that.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it sound better. But yes, 18 years ago, I'm sure a lot of us were sitting in the theater and saw Yoda fire up a lightsaber for the first time. Probably one of the most formative moments of my young life. Do you guys remember what your first thoughts on Attack of the Clones were like as children in the theater walking out? How do you feel about it?
Oh, I mean, seeing the Geonosis arena and all of those Jedi, it was like wildest dreams times 100.
Yeah.
I mean, no one. I don't know. I was young, but I didn't expect that much.
Yeah, me either. Actually, I just realized this, like literally this very moment. Attack of the Clones is the first movie I ever saw more than one time in theaters ever.
Wow.
Yeah, I just realized that, and it was the flippin' Geonosis scene. You're totally right, Charles.
Yeah, I mean, it changed a lot of stuff. I mean,
did.
when I was a kid, there was no question in my mind that the prequels were better than the original trilogy. Like, even after just
Oh, yeah.
Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I want to see Attack of the Clones so many times. The Yoda moment was probably my favorite. And even though it's like fallen in my rankings as life has gone on, I still like those moments still hit me. Wes, how about you? Did it like make you flip a shit?
Attack of the Clones was actually one of my favorite of the prequels up until everybody started bashing it. And I was trying to look back. I was like, why is it so bad? And then I watched it a couple more times and the love scenes were terrible. But
Yeah, you can't.
The Geonosis scenes, I mean, that's what really got me. It's like, oh, all those Jedi. Like, there's more than just, Luke Skywalker and, 2 other people.
Yeah, like the amount of lightsabers. I remember, I think it was an earlier episode, we talked about like how many lightsabers were in the universe before Attack of the Clones, and then post Geonosis fight, it expands like 100-fold.
Yes.
Well, it's one of those movies that it weirdly, I think, has some of the best moments of all of the prequels and some of the worst. And unfortunately, it's just remembered for some of the worst because I mean, the sand comment,
Yes.
a lot of
All
those
the
love scenes are
cringy
really
between
rough
Anakin
to get
and
through.
Padme.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
man, you get to Geonosis, you enjoy a lot of the stuff on Camino, like Django versus Obi-Wan. I mean, that is top of the line prequels.
Absolutely.
Oh,
There's-
yeah.
There's certainly more lore, I think, in Attack of the Clones and probably any other Star Wars film, period. Like all the alien planets and stuff. We get so much cool stuff in Attack of the Clones. The entire introductory scene, too, is fantastic. Like outside of, like even the dialogue is not really bad. Like after you get from like when Anakin is like, why? And Obi-Wan's like, the fuck you say to me? And he's like, why do we have to listen to the Jedi Council all the time? And blah, 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 blah. After that scene, and there's no more cringy dialogue. Like when Anakin and Obi-Wan are like arguing about politics and stuff, like that's pretty cool. And then that whole scene where Obi-Wan dives out of the flipping apartment and catches
the chase through Coruscant.
Yes, that's fantastic. I absolutely love that. So I've always had a special place in my heart for Attack of the Clones. It was probably the first. I don't think I got into like DVDs and VHS and stuff until like Attack of the Clones came out. I was old enough to like have my own VCR and a TV in my room and that sort of thing. Like, and like I used to sneak and like get the VHS and watch it like late at night. And it was like the first one I ever had. I watched it over and over again. So I've always had a special place in my heart. And I'm with you, Wes. I didn't even realize that it was like kind of disliked until relatively recently, the last 5-10 years at least.
Yeah. Well, and I think Attack of the Clones 2 has been one of those books that really benefits from the expanded universe, which, again, we'll get into a lot later as we go forward. But, like, people like looking in here, Timothy was saying, shout out to the novelization for expanding that Boba-Jango relationship. We're going to, spoilers for what we're going to hit later on in this show, absolutely. But
there are multiple covers, too. There's a Yoda cover that's out there. There's this Anakin, Padmé, Jango cover.
Well, I mean, and Jango Fett alone, like learning that Boba Fett was a young clone was huge. Like when I was young, I read some of those young Boba Fett books because of this movie. Like I thought it was so cool that we saw him and it expanded so much. You're right. Like the entire Clone Wars started in this movie. So all that being said, we got some great stuff we loved, some stuff that we improved upon later, and happy birthday, 18 years since Attack of the Clones. If you haven't watched Attack of the Clones in a while, I would highly recommend, if you're working from home, it is a perfect movie to like throw on in another window, like with the sound off and subtitles on, because it. Just kind of have it on for the visuals, let it play along. Like when Anakin rides that speeder on Tatooine and the sun's in the background, like that's an amazing snapshot. And there's a lot of those in Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, absolutely.
So happy birthday. We'll celebrate that a little later on in the show. A couple other things. Corey, you started a new endeavor this week with your chosen life partner.
That is correct. Just what Dr. Helton needs is more hobbies, right?
Yeah, you're so bored.
Yes, I am absolutely so bored. I have nothing to do. I definitely don't have enough hobbies. I love hobbies, guys, if you haven't figured this out yet. I love learning new things and trying something for a while and then giving it up for a while and then picking it back up. I love it. It's my favorite thing. So Caitlin and I picked one up together. It's kind of rare that we find stuff that we both love doing together. So, like, it's always exciting when our hobbies overlap. We started Twitch streaming this week. We have a new Twitch channel, Doc in Mental. I'm a doctor. She's a therapist. Get it? Doc in Mental. Where we are documenting what it's like as a couple who wants to play video games together but doesn't really know like what to play, like how often to do it, like where do we even find games we would like together, because we have very different taste in video games like a lot of couples do. I like FPS games, I like some strategy games like Civilization. Caitlin grew up playing Pokemon, a little bit of Harvest Moon. So like it's always been a challenge trying to find stuff that we enjoy playing together. So that's the entire premise of the Twitch stream. We're going to try to at least get together once a week, kind of a scheduled date night where we play video games together on Thursdays at 7 p.m. That's currently the plan. It's probably going to be kind of wishy-washy for the first month here while I'm on night shift, but I get off of that in June. So, come check it out. Doc and Mental, we stream every Thursday at 7 p.m.
Which is awesome. I mean, I love that. I love you guys to do something together. I think that a lot of couples may struggle with that, especially ones with slightly different interests, but huge shout out to you guys. Keep your eyes posted, I'm sure, in the Discord channels, especially in that video games channel. We will be putting that on every single week. A couple other smaller things. A quick little thing. I just wanted to point out that I got to get an advanced copy of Poe Dameron and Free Fall by Alex Segura. That's coming out in August. And even though there's still an embargo on like full reviews, full things, I just wanted to say to you guys, I've talked about it a little bit in Discord. It's really, really good. I know Queen's Peril is going to get all the publicity right now, as it should, so we don't want to go too far into it. But for my 2 cents, Poe Dameron Free Fall is a fantastic freaking book. It's very much like Most Wanted by Ray Carson, if you really like that. So pre-orders are up now at utini.com. Corey just also brought on a surprise guest, so I'm going to let him talk to the video game.
Good Lord. All right, Juliana, here's Kylo. He like, it's funny that you said that. I looked up and I saw that, I saw that message, and he just happened to like walk by as I looked over. I'm like, hey, come here. You're excited to be on the stream. Say hello. He's growing. He's getting big. He's still a menace. We're potty training. It's not going well. Let's just put it that way.
Not so much Phantom, just all menace.
Yes, all menace, no Phantom. He's a little, you know.
Oh, he's a cute little boy. And for our audio friends, that was Corey's dog. He's amazing and adorable. Corey, can you describe him in explicit detail?
Explicit detail. He's small and black. He's an Aussie Doodle, which I've been instructed does not mean Golden Retriever and Poodle like I thought it meant. Apparently, it's Poodle and dog, because apparently I don't know anything about dogs. Caitlin is the dog whisperer. All right, so he's cute. Now I have Ray and I have Kylo. We have 2 poodle-ish dogs.
Adorable. A little bit later, we'll see what happens. One other thing before we get into some Patreon updates, I wanted to address that there were a lot of rumors. I emphasize that word about the Mandalorian season 2 this week. We're generally not going to talk about those on this show a lot. We are an expanded universe podcast mainly, but y'all, I would just encourage everyone to manage your expectations about these casting rumors. Because of now, I think there are roughly 87 people confirmed to be in season 2 of The Mandalorian. So there's no way that all these people can be in it. As stuff becomes official through StarWars.com, we will totally talk about it. But in case you were coming here for your hot goss about these leaks and rumors and confirmations of clickbait articles, not what we're going to do. So, sorry.
I'm not sorry.
Corey's not sorry at all. He don't care.
Nope.
He didn't care at all.
That's right.
All right. So a couple Patreon updates. We got a new patron this week, James Hawkins. Welcome to the family. Thanks for hanging out and getting a bunch of other shows of us doing this thing.
Yeah, guys, our Patreon is kind of huge now. I realized that we were talking about that this week, Eric, because yeah, we do this show every single week, but we have depending on the week, maybe 3 shows extra that will come out in a given week.
Yeah.
We now have Legends Look Back, which is all about Legends. We have You're in Charlie's show, the Ghost Crew, which now has some sweet new artwork, by the way.
Oh my God, Joxy killed it, absolutely killed it on the new Ghost Crew artwork.
Oh my
Couldn't be more happy.
Yeah, it's incredible, absolutely incredible. And then we also have Bounty Hunt, which is sort of on hiatus. We're still thinking about what we want to do. I think we're going to start kicking that off pretty soon here. But it's a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. It's really cool. And speaking of those, Legends Look Back, that Darth Bane Path of Destruction episode is out right now. And Truce at Bakura, as a reminder, is the next book. So if you want your next book while you're waiting for your Queen's Peril pre-order to come in, Truce at Bakura, so you can catch up with those. Another Patreon update. We did put it in the last show, but I wanted to say it officially on this one at the start. Cheryl Bell joined our Jedi High Council recently to help get us to that I Jedi reading milestone.
Oh my God. We have to talk about this.
Are we there?
No, we're not, but we're closer than we were.
We have to talk about this. So we were trying to think of new Patreon goals, right? Because, Dr. Helton is nothing except a shill for money, right? So
that's you.
That's right. That is absolutely me, right? Apparently. So we're trying to think of we need good Patreon goals, like get people the next step. But also it's just a feature of Patreon, and it alerts you every time you log in. It's hey, you need a goal. So it's you make you feel guilty for not having goals, even though I don't know we really care about it that much. So we're we need a new goal. So we were talking about what we should do, and Eric had a genius idea. A genius idea of forcing me to read I Jedi for an hour,
out loud in front of people.
Yes, why? Why is this a thing? But also, my inner business sense is tingling. It's genius. That's genius. Watch me squirm on camera, and yeah, okay, so we'll do it. We'll do it.
Yep, we'll do it. It's coming. It's coming. So
that was for you, Cheryl.
So get ready for that. Keep your eyes on Patreon. We'll keep you guys updated on that progress. And if you want more of this nonsense, remember, if you're not subscribed to our show, this is your first show, welcome to it. Be sure to subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. Every week we are talking about the Star Wars Expanded Universe and all the goings-on over at Utini. And go ahead and leave us a review on iTunes to help people find us. And at utini.com, we got your reviews, articles, and comprehensive book profiles on every single story in the Star Wars galaxy. Speaking of books, we have a little bit of book news this week. Not a ton. First of all, a reminder to everyone, Queen's Peril, the prequel, the Padmé prequel to Queen's Shadow by E.K. Johnston will be released on June 2nd. And Alphabet Squadron Shadowfall, the sequel to Alphabet Squadron by Alexander Freed, will be released on June 23rd. Those pre-orders are live. Remember, look those up on Utini. We got Amazon links. We got all the affiliates you could want. And after each of those books releases, 30 days-ish after, we are going to be doing roundtables on those books. So Queen's Peril Roundtable is going to hit you at the beginning of August. And the Alphabet Squadron Roundtable, wow, based on those numbers, is maybe 3 weeks after. We'll see how that works. That's going to be tight.
Charles, I hope your summer's not too busy.
You know, just usual doctoring. No big deal.
You'll be fine. Yeah, and speaking of those, Queen's Shadow itself was on the Star Wars Show Book Club this past week. So at the time of, release of this podcast, if you're not on the Patreon feed, it's about a week ago, Friday. Every Friday, the Star Wars Show is talking about a new book. They did Alphabet Squadron first, then they did Queen's Shadow. Definitely go check that out on YouTube. They have E.K. Johnston on there herself talking about some interview questions, talking about some Queen's Peril. Very, very cool. All right, couple of book reviews. Because again, over on Utini, you can leave your book reviews and we'll read them on this show. We got 3 this week. We got, wow, I almost spoiled what they were. Well, where's the fun in that? Let's reveal them one by one. Right. Let's do, hey, Corey,
yes.
Do you want to tackle this first one?
I will absolutely tackle this first one. This is a review of Thrawn by Timothy Zahn, the new canon Thrawn, not like Thrawn Trilogy Thrawn, but Thrawn, the first of the quote-unquote canon Thrawn trilogy. And this is by Alex K. He says, 5 stars. My first Thrawn book. Well, that's very interesting. Although a lifelong Star Wars fan, my foray into Star Wars books did not begin until the past year or so. Thrawn is one of the first canon books I've completed, and I was not disappointed. The best way I can describe the book is a slow burn, but one that gives a thorough and detailed look into Thrawn's backstory and insight into how he thinks and operates. As a fan of the show Rebels, I also appreciate how well this novel ties into the series. If you haven't watched Rebels yet, I highly recommend reading this book first to enhance that experience. Having finished this one, I'm looking forward into diving into more of Zahn's Thrawn books. This is essential reading for any Star Wars fan. 5 stars. I totally back that up, actually. I've told you guys this before. Thrawn is probably in my top 5-ish, like canon books. I love that book. I really, really enjoyed it.
That's a solid Thrawn book, and it's one that I haven't read since Thrawn Alliances and Thrawn Treason came out that like weren't necessarily as good. So I'd like to go back to reread it at some point soon to really like understand, okay, but how good was this first one?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It might be a good book to maybe not do a full roundtable on, maybe revisit before the new Thrawn trilogy comes out, because the Thrawn book does in a way kind of stand alone, because it is, it's just an origin story, right? So like origin stories always stand alone. Like you don't have to know stuff about Rebels. Yes, it has tie-ins that are subtle, but you don't have to know all that stuff to really go. And it also feels like, we've talked a lot about how we have kind of felt that maybe Zahn's hands were a little bit tied in how he produced the second 2 books. It seems like he had a lot of freedom with that one.
Absolutely.
It feels like hardcore old school legend Zahn to me. So I love Thrawn. I highly recommend it. 5 stars. Great review, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Next book I'm gonna take. It's a Legends book by Fulcrum Andor, which is an awesome username. And what I hope is the title of the Cassian show. Spoiler for me. I hope it's just called Fulcrum. They revealed Tales of the Bounty Hunters by and says high highs, low lows, and says to start out, they go story by story, so I'll go through them quickly. The IG-88 story was my least favorite of the bunch. It was relatively interesting, but wasn't a good way to start the book. It never quite captured my attention, and I didn't really get a good sense of the stakes. Dengar's story, on the other hand, was my favorite of the stories. After being disappointed by the IG-88 story, I found myself shocked to be unable to stop reading. Bosk's story lands in 4th. It wasn't super memorable, but I didn't dislike it either. I actually found the side plot to be rather interesting. Next up is Zuckuss and 4-LOM's story, which I'm placing 3rd. Similar to Bosk's story, the side plot was more interesting to me than the story of 4-LOM and Zuckuss, but the way that the 2 stories came together was fantastic. Last in the book is the story of Boba Fett, which lands in 2nd place for me because it successfully gives us not only great development for Boba, but for Han as well. I would definitely recommend this book, especially if you love bounty hunters. I've always been more of a Jedi person, so I was surprised particularly at how quickly and enjoyably I got through Dengar. Boba Fett, and Forlom and Zuckuss' stories. 3 stars.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think it's a great way to look at those anthology type books, because books like Tales of the Bounty Hunter, From a Certain Point of View, Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina, like each story might, Canto Bite as well. Each story might not be your thing, but that's the cool thing about those anthologies, is that you can kind of pick and choose which ones you really love.
Yeah, that's totally true. And we've had a lot to say about, the giant canon, I think, anthology story is certainly From a Certain Point of View. And we've talked a lot about, if you're going to read that one, you probably ought to do the audiobook, because the audiobook is quite the experience. There's I think there's multiple narrators in that project, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Every
single story has a different one.
Different author, at least. I don't know how many narrators actually in the audiobook, but it's a very interesting experience. I will never forget the Kubaz story I've talked about.
Yep.
The Kubaz story in the audiobook format is utterly fantastic. He really goes into the voice. He does the voice really, really well, and the whole thing is narrated in this nasally voice. It's really incredible. So, and
a slight spoiler: the Boba Fett story is narrated by John Hamm. So, if you want some, it's a lovely experience for the ears.
Cool stuff.
Well, I just have 2 thoughts. One, find your IG88.
That's right.
That's throwback.
Oh yes,
Nerd Herder episode. Go listen to that if you haven't heard it. I think that was our first crossover
first
with
guest,
First guest in the show.
And number 2, I now know that Eric is a 4-LOM guy. He's not a 4-LOM guy.
Nice.
Yes. AT-AT or AT-AT, similar.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go around that. Is anyone here a 4-LOM guy?
That's me. I'm an
You're
LOM.
a 4-LOM.
I'm an LOM.
4-LOM, always.
All right. Let's go. How do you say AT-AT?
AT-AT.
I say AT-AT.
Oh God.
I see.
Eric and I. Okay, Corey and I are complete opposites on everything.
As is appropriate.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, let's get out of this grueling fight we're in. Charles, take the last review for one of your favorites.
Yeah, let's talk about something where there's no controversy. The novel Kenobi by John Jackson Miller. So Ashley B is the one that reviewed this over on the site, gave it 4 stars and said a slow but fun read. If you're a fan of Obi-Wan or just getting into the Star Wars Legends universe, this is absolutely a must read. It gives a lot of insight into the character of Obi-Wan. Though a little slow sometimes, this book is definitely a Star Wars essential for fans of the prequels or originals. That's true. It's a great kind of tie-in book between the prequels and the original trilogy. I could totally see how, you might find it a little bit slow at times. It's one of, those classic Western type stories where you kind of have to learn some new ancillary characters. But once you buy into those characters, I think it really flies. And overall, one of my absolute favorites.
Yeah. Super solid book. And I do find that with books like Kenobi and things like, it's really interesting when you read them. Like what point of your life are you in? Like, do you want a book that's a little more chill? Do you want something that's a little more exciting and kind of rambunctious? So I think that's always something interesting to bring in. A quick shout out. Alex K actually just wrote in the chat. Thanks for reading the Thrawn review. Thanks for watching, dude. Currently reading Thrawn Alliances. He says it's a very different feel, but still enjoying it. And
totally.
That may come up a little later in this show as well for reasons that will soon become apparent. So those are our reviews for this week. If you want your book reviews on this very show, look up your book on utini.com, scroll down to the bottom of the page, add a star rating and a user review. You can also email us at livingforcepod@utini.com, tweet at us at livingforcepod, or join our freaking thriving Utini Discord community by going to utini.com/Discord. All right. Last couple things before we get to the Queen, the Senator, the freaking icon of Padmé Amidala. We got some Utini updates. Y'all, the behind the scenes at Utini have been flipping nuts lately. We want to start with a bunch of foundational guides we got going. Corey, what in the world have we been editing and writing and going through these last few weeks?
Yeah, so, you guys know that we've sort of restructured Utini as a company to really focus on bringing people into the expanded universe for the first time. And we have found that the best way to do this, based on all this analysis of how people find our website through Google Analytics and all this fancy behind the scenes business.
So many numbers.
Yeah.
So many numbers.
It's a lot of mumbo jumbo if you're not familiar with it. But we've essentially found found that by far and away the most popular content on our site is this sort of long form. People search for things like how to get into Star Wars books, what's the best Star Wars books, what's the first one I should read, that sort of stuff. So we have really built this entire model around like these foundational guides of like, if you don't know anything about Star Wars and you're seeking answers, this is what you need to read, everything in one place. And we have a ton of them in the works. Like there's a big new huge Ultimate Comics guide up that Eric put together. Thank you for that, Eric. It's really incredible. If you've never gotten into comics for the first time, this is like everything you need to know. It's got a history of comics, like the best stuff to read first. It's super thorough. It's really, really good. We have some best books of all time that's coming down the pipeline, where we literally just go through all the best Star Wars books, literally by the objective rating system that Utini has put together. It's like what we feel are the best Star Wars books ever written. We have a canon guide coming, a legends guide coming. All of this can currently be found on the site. You kind of might have to search around a little bit. It's kind of frustrating, actually, to hit the search button and actually search for like comics guide, that sort of thing. We're working on a big restructuring of the site is coming soon, where all this stuff is very easily accessible. It takes a lot of time to do these type of web design changes, so big stuff has to happen. It takes time.
Yeah, and once all those are all rolled out, where you're gonna be able to find them in like one solid place where you can find all the ultimate guides. Because again, a lot of people, even if you've read a lot of Star Wars books, you got some friends that haven't, or you have some family members that haven't, and you're like, I want to send you this one guide that can help you, that can say, like, all right, you're in your comics right now. Hey, there's a site I'm on. I know you want to talk to me about the stuff, but you don't necessarily want to start where I tell you to. Look at this guide. It'll go you step by step by step. And on things like our best books guide, it literally breaks it down to what's the best Legends book, canon book, YA book. It goes bit by bit to really, really, really help you all out. And if you're not into canon, great, we got Legends. If you're not into Legends, great, we got canon. It'll all be coming down the pipeline. We're so excited to share that with you. And additionally, in addition to structuring an entire website differently, into creating a bunch of guides to fundamentally change how people get into Star Wars books, we're adding another wing of Utini pretty soon.
Yes.
Which is our video wing.
Yeah. Man, so this has been a long time coming. This is pretty cool to get to sort of announce this officially on the show. Utini is, I'm proud to say, Utini is finally going to break into the video market. So video is challenging, guys. If you've ever, I don't know how many folks we have in our community that are YouTubers that are out there running YouTube channels and that sort of thing. It's a lot of work. It's a big investment. It takes the right talent. It takes a ton of experience. The barrier to entry on really good, high-quality video content is enormous. It's very, very high. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of effort and time and energy to get there. And I'm proud to say that we're finally there.
Yep. And what did we do? We hired people that know how to do it.
We did. We did. If Utini is nothing else, it is a community of really, really talented people. Our team is really, really talented. I built this crazy thing on a psychiatry rotation on a whim, and I run it, but I have honestly very little to do with a lot of stuff that happens at UT.
The word you're looking for, Corey, I believe, is conned.
Yes, I conned people. Have you guys ever seen that scene in Huckleberry Finn or is it or Tom
Sawyer?
Tom Sawyer, he like tricks everybody into painting the fence. I'm pretty sure that's what I did somehow with Utini. But Star Wars is awesome. We're really excited to be here. We've assembled a really incredible video team. We have a huge team already, some really great video hosts, some really professional video editors. I'm really, really proud of where we're going. We're shooting for a level of quality that's like somewhere between TV, like Star Wars show, which is quite frankly TV quality, and like all the other YouTubers that are currently on Star Wars. So it's gonna be very professional. The graphics.
Could you hear us all at the same time thinking, "Don't say a specific name. Don't say a specific name." I swear to God.
No. Listen, like everybody on YouTube, Star Wars is really, really great content. We're really proud of all those folks, and we have some cool partnerships actually coming up with some of them. So we love all the Star Wars YouTube. There's nobody doing books really well right now. I don't think nobody doing book reviews, helping people get into books for the first time. So we're really going to focus on video content that's very similar to what's the stuff that's on our website. And we're really shooting for like helping people get into something for the first time, which is really, nobody is really trying to do that right now. So don't take what I just said the wrong way. I'm not saying that anybody on YouTube is not up to par, because everybody on YouTube is doing really, really incredible stuff right now, and we just hope to break the barrier to entry to getting into the books a little better.
Absolutely. And the second those videos start going live, which again will be when they're ready, when we actually put the work in, we're not going to put out any kind of half-assed content. We want you guys to be proud of the stuff that we're creating for you. So we're going to put those links obviously all over the website, Discord, socials, and we will keep you posted. But we wanted to have a nice grand reveal that is coming down the pipeline very soon. So when you get, I don't know, in the future, what could we get? We could get, when there's a written review out, maybe you also get a video review a little bit later that gives the same kind of stuff. If there's a written guide that goes out, maybe there's a video summation of that guide, things like that. And obviously, we are going to try to be as active in the community as we can to see what you want to see. What do you want to see? What do you want us to produce? What do you want to share with your friends? So we are all about that coming up. All right. On that note, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to stretch our legs. We're going to rehydrate. We're going to come back and talk all about magnificent Padmé Amidala. We'll see you in a couple minutes.
All right,
Padmé
I'm
is.
live. We're live.
Yeah,
Guys,
that shirt gets ripped too.
it does. Look, you see the shadow. Look at her abs.
Oh my god!
Like-
wow! Holy crap!
Planks.
She's really.
That's like
absolutely
About
ripped.
the
It's like the
planks.
late '90s Luke Skywalker action figures. That's for no reason.
Yes,
We're
they're
just
all just
roided
jacked.
out.
Oh my
That's
gosh,
right.
yes.
That's right. Somebody I saw that on like Reddit or something like 2 weeks ago or 2-3 weeks ago of like they were making fun of the scene where she gets her like shirt ripped off or whatever. Like it doesn't make any sense. I've never noticed it before. Like the creature. What's the?
Oh, when the Nexus scratches her back
Yes.
and then her front rips open.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah, it's
I've
odd.
never noticed that. Like, I don't know. I guess I just assumed that Padme had a crop top going into that scene, but she
Yeah, no,
obviously
she's, like,
doesn't.
covered head to toe.
Yes. So somehow she got like cut on the back and it ripped off the. I don't know. It doesn't make
It
any
ripped
sense.
off a full sleeve and a front.
Yes, I don't. Ridiculous. I don't know.
Before we come back, interesting chats here. The Facebook stream is definitely working better than the Twitch stream today. Apparently, Twitch is having some video hiccups. Facebook is perfect.
My bit rate is all over the
Good thing
place
I
down
shared
here
that.
too. It's like yellow and red and all kinds of stuff. That's another reason I would love to get our stream off of my Wi-Fi somehow. Like, there's something to think about. Like, maybe we do a second computer connected. To,
You mean your Ethernet?
No, it's on Ethernet. Yeah, it's on Ethernet. It's plugged in. It is plugged
I
in.
was gonna say, fun fact, friends, before we go live today, I spent today putting an Ethernet cable through my apartment all around the molding of my doors to
Oh
get
my
to this
God.
thing. It's a
You
100-foot
sent a
Ethernet cable.
You
need
sent
to
a
share
video.
that video.
Yeah,
Share the
you
video to the Benny Hill song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 45 seconds long, and he's not moving slow, following this cord through every nook and cranny of the apartment.
Like all the doorways. How did you get it to stick in the corners? Is it taped or something?
No, it's got because it comes with these little hooks that you can with little nails. You just nail onto the so
Okay.
it basically has a bunch of little things. Because like my apartment isn't huge, so we had to make sure that we weren't gonna step in it or trip on it, and the pets weren't gonna get to it. So I'm like, this has to be like basically flat to the surfaces, and not going across any floors. So it was a fun day.
Yeah.
All right, y'all ready?
Yep.
Okay. And we are back. Wow, what a great cameo that was. I think it was high quality. Hi, guys. Back. Oh, we are back. Living Forest Podcast, episode 57. If you skip to this part, you have really good aim on your scrubber. We're talking about Padme, guys. It's Padme Amidala time because, as we said earlier in the show, Queen's Peril.
What was
I
that?
read the word cameo that Heather just wrote, and my
Are
brain
you
put them
channeling your inner trade federation right there.
together. Absolutely. Queen's Peril is coming out on June 2nd. And it looks something like this.
I just want to point out that Perro is Spanish for dog, and I really now want a Star Wars book about Padme's dog.
Oh my God, me too. Queen's Peril.
Queen's
That'd be
Peril.
amazing. But Queen's Peril will be coming out in a little bit. So we decided we would talk about Padme. Padme is a character that obviously has been around since 21 years ago now, since Phantom Menace. But really kind of came into her own, I would say 18 years ago in episode 2, Attack of the Clones, and has had an up and down relationship with some Star Wars fans. Partially because of how her fate ends up in episode 3, partially because of kind of how some dialogue worked in episode 2, but I think over the last few years especially has had a huge renaissance in the expanded universe, and that's a huge part of the expanded universe, is taking characters and giving them life beyond the movies themselves. So guys, I just want to start out by asking y'all, what was your first impression of Padme when you were a kid? Now this could be like, were you a Padme fan episode 1? Did she really get to you episode 2? Episode 3? Did you never really care? What was the feel about Natalie Portman's character?
She was a babe. Could we just say out
very
of the
attractive person. We can say that,
Yeah.
and we can say that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Padme was always a really cool character. I don't think for me it was really until the Clone Wars that I truly appreciated her as a deep character with you know, a lot of angles, right? A lot of thoughts in. I don't know. She's just so developed in the Clone Wars. Like, she's so independent from Anakin, and she doesn't really have that. I don't think throughout the films as much. So, Clone Wars for me.
Yeah, and you too, like you see her actually having power alongside our Lord and Savior Bail Organa, and like people that are also very powerful. You see deleted in Attack of the Clones. You see that character come up. Charles, what about you?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I mean, I was young. I'm 27. I was like 6 years old when The Phantom Menace came out. So I don't know that I really understood the nuances of her character at the time. And I've said on this show before that I think the prequels actually, just due to time constraints, really hurt Padme's character. She has a much more robust story that's in the deleted scenes. And then we get a lot of that content in the expanded universe now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think by the time episode 2 rolled around, I really found, looking back, I think Padme to be a great extension of the character of Leia, which really was her point. But, you know, growing up on the original trilogy VHSs, I never questioned Leia as a character in terms of her strength and her leadership ability. And I think that kind of blossomed further with seeing Padme in the prequels to this day. And I think it's thanks to Star Wars. I've never questioned the strength of female characters, their ability to take the lead, you know, their ability to be the heroine in the story. Like Padme didn't need anyone to save her. Sure, Anakin and Obi-Wan were there protecting her, but she, you know, fights for herself and, you know, fights on their behalf just as much as the opposite. And I think that was kind of a big part and a big lesson to kind of carry forward, not just into Star Wars, but into the real world and into stories from other universes as well.
Yeah, God, absolutely. I think that, like you guys, my thoughts on that part of Padme were a little more subliminal as a kid, because I was, again, looking at like, oh, she's really cool and this is really fun, but I was more about Anakin and Obi-Wan and all that stuff. But then as I've gotten older, honestly, a large part of my love for Padme has come from the books and it's come from the fan community as a whole. Because I had no idea Padme meant so much to so many like cosplayers, fan artists, things like that. Because you go to these cons and you see Star Wars Celebration photos, Padme is everywhere. And as I started getting more into that side of Star Wars, I was like, okay, why Padme? Because I always assumed it was Leia. I always assumed it was like these other characters that people liked more, but she came up more and more in the interviews with these fans on what she meant to them in the early 2000s, like really kind of made me look at her a whole new way. And now when I watch the films, I'm like so stoked for the Padme parts. I love seeing her. When it's announced in a comic that Padme is going to show up, I'm like, oh my God, like I get actually excited. And I think I give a lot of credit of that to the community, which is interesting. And on that note, I want to ask you guys, it does seem like weirdly in the last, let's say 2 or 3 years, with things like Queen Shadow, which things like the Age of Republic Padme comic, and like TV shows with her coming up in the Clone Wars again. Like, why is this the character that the larger community seems to have really taken under their wing so recently? Because she's been out of movies since 2005. Like, why do you think 2018, 2019, 2020 has become like the time of getting Padme to the forefront?
I think it's a good question. I think part of it is time is kind to Star Wars films. And even though there was a lot of vitriol out there for the prequels, I think a lot of that is fading away. And there's a lot more of an appreciation for it, especially with the generation that grew up with them, kind of getting more to that content creation phase. If you follow Ahmed Best on Twitter, he talks a lot about this too, how George Lucas told him, like, there's going to be hate for these movies, but in the future, people are going to be more accepting. And I think that's been entirely true. The other aspect, I think, is that Padme, her story is a tragedy, ultimately.
Yeah.
Right?
Like a classic tragic tale, for sure.
Yeah.
Like forbidden love, a job she never quite asked for, and then an early death at the hand of, it is pretty Greek, honestly.
It is. And I think that is, it, in a way, makes us, even though we appreciate that story, feel robbed of her story and what we think as a character she could have accomplished in the larger story. And so I think we're still kind of scrabbling to get more and more about her because we want to have that experience.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, I want to ask the bigger question on that, right? So speaking of her death in Revenge of the Sith has been widely talked about. We've talked about it on this show, how there is literally a medical term for dying of a broken heart. There's people that say, was Sidious using the Force to suck the life out of her to put into Anakin? What did he actually do damage Anakin, like actually damage her when he was first choking her? Like all these different reasons Padme could have died, right? But in the film, it's like she died of a broken heart. And that has been pretty controversial because it's taking a strong female character that has had all this agency and all this stuff. And at the end, she gets so sad that she dies because the guy she loves is leaving, essentially, and has gone down a horrible path. Do you guys think at this point in our Star Wars lives that was still a good choice for the story? Or have you like come to terms with it based on some more EU stuff? I think that's a hard question. I acknowledge it. That's why I'm asking it first instead of answering.
Well, I think the first thing we have to address, Charles and I are doctors, right? Like on the show, right? So like
that is why we start every show saying that. Absolutely,
that is true. We are.
It's in our contract. It's in my contract. It's the only thing in my contract that's written in crayon.
Yes. So we've never really talked about Star Wars medical stuff on this show. We probably should at some point. I mean,
we do keep saying that's going to be a future episode.
We do. I think the reality of the matter is that Charles and I do this for a living. So we're like, we don't really want to talk about medicine. We want to talk about Star Wars, right? So maybe we can mix the two of us somehow. So let's talk about dying from a broken heart for a second, because this is a real medical condition. Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. That's how you pronounce it, right, Charles? Is it Takotsubo?
Yep.
There's the next T-shirt.
Yes, the next
right
T-shirt.
There.
Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. This is a very bizarre medical phenomena in which essentially the muscles of one of the major chambers of the heart, they contract in response to a phenomenal emotional stressor. Okay, so this is a real thing. A lot of times you hear, like, you see this stuff about like an older couple that died within minutes of each other, things like that. Like that's often the case is a Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. You hear crazy stuff of a bride who was killed in a tragic car accident on the way to the honeymoon, right? And the husband suddenly dies a couple days later, Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. So in medicine, we do call this broken heart syndrome. That's the actual like layman term for it, is broken heart syndrome. So this is a real thing, right? So the fact that Padme dies from this tragedy is actually not that medically far-fetched. There's a lot of weird medicine in Star Wars, but this one is actually pretty viable. I think the biggest point of criticism about this is the doctor droid or whatever, the Uba with the two hands, the speculum hands.
Yeah.
He comes up to Obi-Wan, and this is the problem with mixing Star Wars and medicine, and he or she, whatever, I guess she is the droid. The droid is like, she's lost the will to live. Like, no, that's not really it. Like, it's not that she's lost the will to live. It's that her heart is literally contracted in a way that cannot be explained. That's what actually has happened. So, if they had let it, if the droid had said, if the line had, instead of being she's lost the will to live, if the droid had said her heart is failing and we cannot explain it, that would have no more controversy. That would have solved all the medical controversy because it has a viable explanation.
That's actually an important delineation too. Her will to live versus that she's so overwhelmed with emotion that her heart is failing her.
Yeah, because Padme is one of the most willful people in Star Wars, I would say. Like the strongest, like if you're talking about just base will, this is a woman who has been in charge of people yelling at her since she was like 10 years old. And it's just constantly fought back. So that's an interesting point. Sorry, real quick. Joxy over on Facebook just brought up, what about Debbie Reynolds dying right after Carrie Fisher?
That's very interesting.
That hit me, so thank you for ruining my day.
Yeah.
With that thought. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, you see this. I mean, it's relatively uncommon, but it's not so uncommon that like we don't know how to recognize it. We certainly study it in medical school. I've never personally seen it. Charles, have you seen it? Any patients ever?
I haven't personally seen it. No.
I've not either. I've heard some case studies, and I've read the case studies and stuff, so maybe I'll come across it sometime in our career, but I'm not really sure. I'd love to chat with a cardiologist about how common this actually is. But, like, I remember learning about this in medical school, and Padme was the example in my mind.
Wow.
Yeah, they're like,
yeah.
like 100%, like doing test questions, that's sort of a trick in medicine they teach you when you have all these standardized tests, is like to think about cases. You read case studies, and there's always a story associated with the case, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you can picture in your mind the case itself, you're more likely to remember the answer, right? So Padme was my answer when thinking about Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, because it's a weird word. It doesn't make any sense. Why is it called that? You know what I mean? So it was that was my test strategy, is thinking about Padme. So that's funny that this got brought up.
Well, and one of the interesting things too about Padme specifically is that even though she's died, there has been this kind of loophole that has been created in the last, I mean, it was created in Phantom Menace, but it's really been exploited the last couple of years to keep her story going. And that's through the story of Sabe, who is the first name on my shirt. If you're watching live, I am wearing our handmaiden shirt that Corey expertly designed a while back with all the handmaidens from Queen's Shadow. Sabe, of course, at the top. Spoilers ahead for the current / on hiatus / I hope coming back soon Darth Vader comic that's been releasing through Marvel. They have allowed Sabe to come up in other stories to essentially take the part of what Padme would have done, or like search for Padme because a literal double, right, was created by George Lucas. So now authors are like, wait a minute. We can't bring her back from the dead necessarily. Well, so far, to be honest, this is not in the future when people listen to this podcast, maybe she has. But at this point in 2020, they can't bring her back from the dead, but they can have her almost identical body double who was around her forever live out some storylines. Like, can you guys think of another storyline in Star Wars that is that unique and that much of like a loophole for authors?
Not with essentially a double, like.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing about it is, like, it's so perfect, because why does Anakin do everything that he does that turns him into Vader? Is to save the one that he loves, right?
Exactly.
And he can't do it. And that's the whole point, and that's his downfall. And then you see him in all of the comics and some of the expanded universe thinking that he can somehow reach Padme. And then you reintroduce someone who is almost identical to her in both physical characteristics and personality, and you just see what happens. I mean, there's so much drama in that, right?
Yeah. And it's a story that you're like, that's so cool. And then when you read it, you're like, we didn't think of that before? Like, as a writer, how lucky you must be, because you got to think, okay, someone's definitely written this. There's no way that I'm the first person to think about it. So I'm really excited to see what they do with Sabe, who has weirdly become one of my, like, you guys may have noticed on this show, I like to take random side characters and fall absolutely in love with them. Bail Organa, of course, being the top. But Sabe is a character that ever since Queen's Shadow came out, I have really just like latched onto and loved and really been excited for. So the fact that they're like, all right, yeah, we'll keep talking about her. That sounds good. Makes me really excited. But if you, like us, are getting this kind of new appreciation for Padme, you may wonder, okay, I've watched all the Clone Wars. I have seen all the prequels so many times. I've read maybe nothing involving Padme. Where can I go? Well, luckily for you, everyone, we have reading collections over at UTD, and we do have a collection all about Padme. So at the end of this show today, we are going to go over this collection and tell you where you can go next when wondering about Padme. To start off, guys, where else could I possibly start but Queen's Shadow, and essentially Queen's Peril, which will be, again, coming up June 2nd. Pre-order now. Which will be coming up soon.
Your cop. No big deal.
No big deal, no at all. But Queen's Shadow by E.K. Johnston is the premier Padme book. I mean, guys, have we talked about any book on this show weirdly more than Queen's Shadow?
Honestly, I don't think we do. It was a joke for the longest time because we kept losing the audio from the like roundtables we did. Lost it twice. We've done 3.
The Curse of the Queen's Shadow.
Queen's Shadow. We've done 3 roundtables. The final one actually was really, really great. And in the time of losing all the audio, I think that Charles and I really kind of changed our opinions of the book a lot. Like we had a much more positive experience.
I'm glad we lost the old audio, to be entirely honest with you. One, because Corey, were you on the first one, or was it always?
It was a really big group chat with a whole bunch of
right.
Utini folks. I think exclusively streamed this Facebook, and it wasn't very good. We were kind of mean, honestly. I think.
It was not a great one. It was also when we were trying to like find our footing.
We were trying to figure out who we were, and like we had not yet fully established our opinion on like how critical do we want to be, right? Like because there's a fine line between being critical and being mean, and we hadn't quite found that yet. It's a very very fine line to walk that we really put a lot of effort and energy into because we want to be kind. We don't want authors to think that we don't like their works because we certainly do, even if we don't enjoy certain parts of certain books, right? So. We hadn't quite figured that out yet, so I'm kind of glad we lost it.
But then Eric and I repeated it, and we also lost. It was just us two. It was a one-on-one. It was at least an hour, if not more. We lost that audio too. I'm pretty sure that was my fault. And
it was a rough. I remember I was like sitting in like I think a kitchen in Alabama. Trying like sweating without a fan.
Right. I gave like Charles like a crash course on how to record all this like over the phone. It wasn't at all adequate on my part either. It was technology, guys. Utini and technology. We have a long history together.
We do, but the point being, I'm actually really glad we lost all of that audio because I'm glad that the first conversation that we put out there was the one that we did. Yeah. Because I don't know that I've ever really 180'd that much on a book. I honestly was not a fan when I finished it the first time. It was fun. I love Star Wars stories regardless, but it wasn't something I was going to pick up and read just of my own accord.
Sure.
And then that became one of our goals here at Utini. We did it, and I'm super glad I did because it really is a fun book.
Yeah. And the reason why we put this at the top of the Padmé collection is because it's fun and because it is so focused on the character. Like E.K. Johnston really gets into her mind. And as a character that is, put in a lot of the prequels to serve other characters and doesn't quite get her moments to shine as much as you'd want, this book is all her shining. It's her meeting her handmaids. It's her working together. It's her becoming a senator. And it's really excellent. So that is why it firmly sits at the top of our Padmé collection.
Yep.
Second of all, we have a book that has already been mentioned on this podcast. It is the Attack of the Clones novelization by R.A. Salvatore, who is a fabled fantasy writer. If you've read any of it. Right? Huh?
He goes by Bob. I think he lives in the same town as someone on the Utini team.
Yes, he does.
Is it Jared? I think Jared.
Jared lives close.
I think it's Jared, yeah. Which is awesome. He's written a bunch of the Dritz-Do'Urden, if you're a D&D fan, a lot of the Forgotten Realms books, but he also wrote the Attack of the Clones novelization.
And he wrote Vector Prime.
Yes, he wrote Vector Prime.
He's done.
And then because of the Star Wars community doing what it sometimes does, he no longer writes them because there were death threats.
What do you know? Because people are assholes? No, that can't be right. No.
Who would have thunk?
Who would have thought?
But
not at Utini. Join our Discord. If you don't think there are good Star Wars fans out there, you got to join our Discord.
Absolutely. But Attack of the Clones novelization is great because a lot of that stuff we talked about being deleted from the movie that gives Padmé some good stuff, a little dialogue that helps a lot, is in this book. She's also on my cover. Charles, I just realized you and I do have the same cover of this book.
Yeah.
We have the Anakin Padmé Django cover. It does a great job to put that stuff back in. And why do you guys think that between Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith, the three novelizations are very different from each other and are also kind of really expansive compared to maybe some of the other ones? Why do you think there's so much like put into the prequels as opposed to maybe like say Force Awakens, Last Jedi, or some even the original trilogy ones?
Well, I think it's just just what we were talking about, sort of getting on our feet with the first Queen Shadow roundtable we did. I think this is a good example of how the Lucasfilm business has changed over the years, right? Like when the original trilogy books were released, they were all released before the movies. In fact, every book was released before the movies other than the sequel trilogy. Fun fact. The original books were released like well before the movies. Everybody thought the movies were going to fail, like all of them. Everybody said this next Star Wars film is going to be the one that fails. They never thought that the first Star Wars film was going to be successful, period. None of the actors did. You watch the behind the scenes stuff and they're like, this is a big joke. There's no way this is going to be real. And then the final product was spliced together by incredible editors, and it turned into a beautiful film. So, I think I think why the books are so different is just the nature of its time, right? By the time the prequel books had rolled around, George Lucas was well established, multi-millionaire at that point, like incredibly successful franchise, a lot of pressure to get it right with the prequel trilogy, and I think they just sort of figured it out. They figured out like what they wanted to do with the films. Lucas was actually more involved in the novelizations of the prequel trilogy more than I think he was in any other writing projects. He actually the Revenge of the Sith novelization he hand edited. It's the only book like that's written in all of Star Wars that George Lucas actually put his final stamp of approval on because he got the document on his computer and corrected it himself. All right, that's the only book that's happened with. So
weird how that's like widely hailed as the best Star Wars book of all time, but George Lucas doesn't know anything about Star Wars.
That's right. Yeah, not a thing. Right. So it's just I think it's simply a product of its time. You know, the prequel books came at an era of Star Wars where everyone was much more sure of themselves. Whereas the sequel trilogy, Disney was trying to figure it all out. I think we're just now finally getting to the part where Disney is figuring it all out too.
Yeah, because we pretty unanimously really enjoyed Ray Carson's Rise of Skywalker novelization. Like, regardless of your thoughts on the film, it did finally really expand some stuff.
Totally.
And honestly, with this Attack of the Clones novelization, especially for the Padme stuff and like the Jango Fett, Boba Fett stuff, you could slap expanded edition on this book, no problem. Same with Phantom Menace. Same with Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
So if you want some more of those scenes, if you want some of those scenes with Padme, because again, with her death happening in canon, we're not going to get necessarily new content from her, but you can go backwards and get more stuff in this novelization specifically. Third book, we're going to switch a little bit. We're going to go back to official canon and hit Thrawn Alliances, which is the second in the, again, weirdly trilogy. That's not really a trilogy of canon Thrawn books. But Padme is super featured in this book. She hasn't the book is split up kind of like a Game of Thrones book almost. There's Thrawn chapters and Anakin chapters and Padme chapters. But Padme is a vital character in this novel. And why do you guys think that Zahn decided to give her an entire storyline literally to herself in a book based on probably his greatest creation?
Wow, that's a good question. I think it's because he used this book really to explore the character of Anakin and Anakin's turn into Vader, right? I mean, as much as it is a book about Thrawn, it is also a book about Vader. And I can't really say why he chose to make, that part of his story. But if you really want to hit the core of who Anakin is, you have to understand who Padme is as well.
Yeah.
And so that's really, it's a dichotomy that really had to be in this book if you're really going to get to that level, because it's Thrawn in a lot of ways seeing through Vader and seeing him for Anakin. And so it strengthens the book to have that Padme, I don't even want to say subplot. It's almost like a co-plot, right?
Yeah.
It's
right.
on the same level. And interestingly enough, one of the coolest pieces of art came out for Thrawn Alliances. I pulled it up on my phone here for anyone that's watching live, but this Padme art that they released just before, they actually had this book come out. This was one of the big pieces of art that came out with her on Batuu.
Yeah, which is super cool that they they're promoting this character that they love, this place that would eventually become this theme park that would change all of Star Wars forever. And then also here's Padme Amidala. She is on that level of importance with them. So you get an entirely new Padme story that is in canon surrounding some pretty important events. So highly recommend Thrawn Alliances for more Padme. Fourth on our list, we already mentioned it. It's the Revenge of the Sith novelization. I mean, there's not much that this book doesn't add to Star Wars. Every character in it gets expanded. Every plot line gets expanded, and that includes Padme as well. I mean, you want to somehow be even more crushed when she's killed at the end of the movie? Like, read the book. It is.
Oh my God, yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
It's so good.
I don't really have much to add. It hits you.
We briefly talked about at the top of this episode that we were working on a best Star Wars books of all time. Revenge of the Sith is the Utini best Star Wars book of all time, and I think a lot of this is absolutely to do with Padme and her role in the book, as well as her relationship with Anakin and the utter tragedy that is their relationship. God, it's so good. Obi-Wan and Padme, I think that's the most that stands out to me more than anything else. Charles, I'm sure you have thoughts on that.
Just a few. I mean, Look at, oh man, you guys want to just you want to just live stream the end of Revenge of the Sith after this? All of that weird time period between when Anakin falls and when Obi-Wan and Anakin fight on Mustafar, there's such a weird aspect to those relationships, between Padme really ultimately trusting Obi-Wan kind of betraying her, and I'm saying kind of because I'm such an Obi-Wan fan, and like stowing away on the ship, right, to get to Mustafar.
Yeah.
Anakin, accusing Padme of choosing Obi-Wan over him in that moment. I mean, it's really complicated, but it's so good.
It's yes. I as you were talking, I'm just reading through those last little pages, and it's horrifyingly good, but it's amazing. And Padme is given all the respect she deserves. Star Wars: Revenge of the Sith, can't give it up enough. And the last one is a comic issue that we want to say. Last year before, time doesn't matter. They released the Age of Republic comics, which were a bunch of single issue comics based on an era. So there was Star Wars Age of Republic about the prequels, Star Wars Age of Rebellion about the originals, and Star Wars Age of Resistance about the sequel trilogy. So they each followed a specific character. But Padme has her own comic, which is great. It's all Padme centered. She's on an adventure. She gets to be a little sneaky. She gets to be a little fun. She gets to have some action. Jody Houser wrote it. And again, if you want some more Padme, it's a bite-sized offering, especially if you're not into Star Wars comics yet. This Age of Republic, Age of Rebellion series is pretty perfect with it because, they're not huge. Done. You get a full story in a little bite-sized way, and you get more Padme. So can't recommend that enough to round it out. But to reframe that, guys, we got Queen Shadow by E.K. Johnston. That's really all about Padme. We got Attack of the Clones novelization, R.A. Salvatore. That's putting a lot more Padme back in that movie. Thrawn Alliances by Timothy Zahn with one of the best Star Wars writers, basically giving her an entire plot to herself. Revenge of the Sith novelization by Matthew Stover, which aside from being the best book of all time, is just incredible in the stuff it gives to Padme. And the Age of Republic Padme comic by Jody Houser, which is giving her own story. So, to end our Padme talks, guys, how do you think Padme's legacy has changed thanks to the expanded universe? From if she had just stopped being on screen after Revenge of the Sith versus now, going forward, how is her legacy different?
That's a good question. Probably the most important question is of her character in general. I mean, Padme has gone from being a side character, romantic love interest, like a means to an end to develop Darth Vader as a character, to being her own independent, free-thinking, her own goals and ambitions. Like, she's such an important character in the grand scheme of things for a number of reasons. Like, it's not just a tragedy that, that Anakin was in love with Padme and she died, right? The tragedy is that Padme was such an important player in the grand scheme of the Republic itself, and that Anakin loved her as much as he did, and her death is really what drove him over the edge, right? So, like, Padme is such a deep character. Like, she's probably the character with the most depth of all of the prequel trilogy. I mean, she really is. Like, all the way through the Clone Wars and everything. She's an incredible character. We came from Queen Shadow, which we originally did not like that much, so when we paid much more attention to it, we absolutely loved it, and I'm, like, super stoked for Queen's Peril to come out. If you guys have not already pre-ordered this book, you got to do it. It's coming out soon, and we're like, I'm so stoked to read it, because Padme is she's so important in my mind as a female Star Wars character. She's up there with Princess Leia as being the most important, so I'm jacked.
Absolutely. Charles, what do you think? The legacy of Padme Amidala.
I agree. I mean, I think it's still evolving, and I think we're going to continue to get these Padme stories because, as you said, we're kind of riding that prequel wave recently. But, ultimately, yes, Anakin is the chosen one. Padme was the chosen one's chosen one and was every bit as important as him, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she was someone who had strengths where he had weaknesses. But in a lot of ways, they were very similar in their capability to love incredibly deeply. And then we saw Anakin really pull that switch. He, I think, ultimately betrayed Padme, and that's the tragedy of Star Wars in general. as far as what we're seeing from Padmé now in the expanded universe, again, I think it's the stories that we maybe subconsciously felt robbed of that we are currently getting in the canon. And I would like more, because the more that we learn about Padmé, the more appreciation I have for the character. That's held true up to this point, and I think it's going to continue to Queen's Peril and beyond.
No question. I think the beauty of the Star Wars expanded universe is that it gets to do that. It gets to fill out characters more. It gets to go back and add these little additions to all these characters that we were robbed of too soon. Like you're saying, I love the fact that Padmé has grown this much in our minds, in fans' minds, in the general idea of Star Wars. The fact that she is the one that kind of helped birth a rebellion that her daughter would continue, that she is the reason that it starts. She's the reason that it succeeds. And her legacy lives on far after her in the lives of the characters of Star Wars and also in the fans as they read. So on that, God, this character is amazing. I can't wait for more of her as the years go on. I'm sure we have read far from our last Padmé story, but if you want to read the next one, make sure you get on that Queen's Peril train June 2nd. It is going to start the summer of Star Wars books. And on that, my friends, that is going to do it for this Padmé-filled week's episode of The Living Force. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts and tune in every week to hear the crew at UTini talk about the Star Wars expanded universe. If you want to buy some of these books and want to help support the show, look up your book on UTini, click the Amazon link on the profile, and we'll get a few cents to help keep the lights on. If you'd like to help us out more directly, you can find us on patreon.com/UTini or on TeePublic, where our shirt designs are live. If you're an Inquisitor tier or up and you're watching live, head over to Patreon right now to join us for Aftermath, our after episode discussion show. If you're already on Patreon, now is the time to upgrade. If you're not yet an Inquisitor or up, you do have time to make it into our live Aftermath, where we talk Star Wars and just hang out every week after our live show. A special thank you to Cheryl Bell, Drew Ibarrando, and Patrick Ortiz on our Jedi High Council, and Timothy Dunlap and Ross Orlando on our Alliance High Command for your amazing support of this show. We really appreciate it. You can find us on Twitter. I'm at Eric Eilerson. Corey is at Doc Star Wars MD. Charles is at C. Henkel. A special thank you to Matt Davenport, our amazing editor, Freddie, our producer, and Wes, our co-host and community manager. Thanks to Corey, Charles, and Wes for podcasting with me. And as always, may the Force be with you.